Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. About a week ago, I had my first hands-on unboxing of Sony's latest mid-range iteration, the Xperia 10 Mark IV. Today I want to inform you on my experiences with a device that I indeed dubbed Europe's Pixel stand-in potentially. Let's find out if Sony managed to deliver a worthwhile experience, shall we? Before we dive in, however, if you like these type of videos and this is your first time stopping by the channel, I would appreciate it if you could smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. It's completely free and helps out the channel massively. A massive thank you for that in advance once again. With all that said, let's get into it. The Xperia 10 Mark IV is the successor to last year's 10 Mark III, and up front I can already inform you that compared to last year's iteration, this year again we are entreated to significant changes, following the previous model, which followed this trend from last year's previous model, the Xperia 10 Mark II, both of which I featured on the channel. This brings us to the design of the Mark IV, which, in regards to what I said previously, offers no real surprises. The design, if anything, can be classified as small changes and refinement overall. In terms of looks, when looking more closely, you can actually see and notice that the device has become more rectangular, in line with its big brother, the big boy, the mighty 1 Mark IV. It's not something noticeable at first glance, but becomes very apparent when holding the device in hand. On that topic though, the device, just like previous Xperias, feels solid and well constructed in the hand, making it feel and handle like indeed a more high-end premium product, if you will. The construction offers all this despite being fabricated of mainly plastic. This might sound like a downgrade compared to last year, but when holding the device in hand itself, it surely does not feel like it, and the feel of quality holds up well. Three other solid additions to the design and construction of the device are the IP68 water and dust resistant, while maintaining the headphone jack whilst also offering the option of expandable storage. This combo is getting increasingly rare on phones these days, but fortunately not on Xperia devices. The screen is pretty much identical to last year in terms of size and specs. We get a Full HD plus 1 billion colors HDR included AMOLED screen at the notorious 60 Hz. The only improvement over last year's model is the increased quality of the employed glass, which is Gorilla Glass Victus instead of Gorilla Glass 6. Now that we've seen the external of the device, let's talk about internals. We now get the fastest 6 series Snapdragon chip, the Snapdragon 695, which is only slightly faster in terms of CPU speed compared to last year's Snapdragon 690, which was employed in the Mark III. The GPU, for example, is identical. The same goes for the included memory, which is still 6GB of RAM coupled with 128GB of standard storage, which of course, as previously mentioned, is luckily upgradable via microSD if needed. Now on to the performance of the device. Performance of the device is interesting to say the least, as on paper it is outperformed by nearly all brands in its price range except for Nokia probably. That being said, Sony has stayed true to what it has done in most of its devices, which is offer a light and snappy user experience. In other words, this phone is a breeze to work with smooth operation and animation despite topping out at just 60 Hz. Switching between apps is smooth and happens without any hassle. Heavier apps, like big games, though, do need to take a little longer to launch than, for instance, a Snapdragon 780 or 778G enabled device, and faster. Now on to the software and the interface. Running on top of all that medium hardware is Android 12 with Sony's UX on top, although that can literally be taken lightly, as the interface belongs to the near stock breed instead of the altered and feature-rich skins. Speaking of features, two welcome ones are the split-screen multitasking launcher, which makes it very easy to pair two apps together. Multitasking as a whole is quite a breeze on these Xperias, as the screen has a very tall aspect ratio of 21:9, which is a dream for split-screen multitasking. The final software feature that grabbed my attention is the pop-up window feature, making a return on Xperias. This is always nice to have, and is definitely not a stock Android feature, but something also found on Samsung and Xiaomi devices, for example. As a whole, the Xperia interface is one of the best around, and seemingly the ultimate blend of stockness and vanilla Android with some prime features from heavier skins. A bit of best of both worlds, I would say. Now on to general performance. It stands to reason that in terms of gaming this phone is mid-tier at best, but it is indeed powerful enough to run any and all games. Just don't expect to be spoiled with the highest settings. But that is of course shared among other mid-ranges as well. Again, the screen aspect ratio and quality is perfectly adequate for entertainment, which also includes gaming. All in all, a nice phone to use, contrary to what the numbers would have you believe. The Xperia 10 Mark IV really is a smooth and silky experience in a nice constructed body without a lot of compromises. Next up, let's talk about the camera. In terms of camera, we can be very brief on the specs. These are identical to last year's model. We have the following setup again: a main lens of 12 megapixel with an aperture of f1.8, a secondary telephoto lens of 8 megapixel resolution with 2x optical zoom capability with an aperture of f2.4, and a third ultra-wide lens with 8 megapixel resolution with 120 degrees wide-angle view. The only spec that has been tweaked is the slightly larger sensor size of the telephoto lens. All other specs are the same, even the front-facing 8 megapixel camera remains identical to the unit found in last year's model. As such, the results of the camera shouldn't be a surprise if you are familiar with the Xperia 10 series starting from the Mark II. Just like last year, compared to other setups in the segment, the Xperia 10 Mark IV is the only one with the convenience of a telephoto lens amongst its shooting array. It is a standout feature amongst its peers and truly makes the device a bit of a unique offering because of it. Just for context, any non-Pro phone of the premium brands omit this feature. Take the iPhone 12 or 13, for example, or the Pixel 6 or 6a. The closest match in terms of being mid-range but with telephoto would be last year's Galaxy A72 5G. But that is priced very closely to its S22 sibling. Even the new Galaxy A73 has now removed the telephoto lens. So that's a bit odd, but speaks to the uniqueness of the Xperia 10 Mark IV even more. Now, how does the camera perform with all this hardware? Well, during the day, outdoor shots come out nicely with often well-balanced contrast and color reproduction. Detail is also nicely shown even on the ultra-wide lens. It is noticeable that the ultra-wide lens offers some less contrast in especially dark sections of the photo as compared to the other lenses. Indoor shots hold up good as well, although if indoor shots get a little dark, noise creeps in rather quick. As a whole, the whole camera experience is kind of a hit or miss. The automatic scene detection does an adequate job, but just like last year and its more premium brother, the Xperia 1 line, it is also an extra feature of the Xperia to use a manual mode, which can eke out just a little bit more quality in terms of camera and shots. Speaking of shots, nice shots aren't anything special for the class and easily get overshadowed by the actual Pixel 6a, which is one of the many mid-range rivals of the Xperia. Onto video. Video is also decent, although again nothing particularly stellar in its class. It does offer the new high contrast mode on this new Xperia, although the results vary quite a bit. Oftentimes you trade in contrast for stabilization or vice versa, but nonetheless it's an interesting feature to play with. Again, something that you can manually tweak. All in all, nothing much has changed in terms of camera performance. This is also reflected in the front camera, which is identical to the last year's models in terms of supported resolutions and picture quality. So in terms of camera, not quite the Pixel 6a, but a very unique and self-containing experience. So with the camera down, let's talk about the general experience before closing. This again echoes last year's experience I'd had with the Mark III, and that this is a versatile, luxurious mid-ranger with all the utilities you could hope for. This includes retention of the headphone jack, expandable storage and class-leading ingress protection. Charging and battery performance is mixed, in that charging speeds are nothing special at 21 watts, but battery performance endurance again is class-leading, with little to no surprise given the power-efficient Snapdragon 695 chipset coupled with a 5000 mAh this year around. 500 mAh up from last year's 4500 mAh equipped Xperia Mark III. Expect 1.5 days of medium use. This was easily achievable in my experience and really is an enhanced feature not only compared to last year's Mark III but also in regards to its rivals in the medium segment. With that said, I'd say it's time to end with a brief conclusion. The Xperia 10 Mark IV really isn't much of an upgrade compared to the Mark III, so if you're considering to upgrade, I would hold back just one more year. For anybody else looking for a decent mid-ranger though, if you value practicalities like a headphone jack, ingress protection and expandable storage coupled with decent to outstanding battery life, depending on your use, I would surely shortlist the Xperia 10 Mark IV. And I say shortlist instead of recommend because truth be told, this is possibly the most challenging segment on the market right now, with rivals such as the aforementioned Pixel 6a, which offers class-leading camera performance and software support, or the quirky new Nothing phone with its gorgeous 120Hz OLED screen and captivating design. And of course, one of the best value propositions in the class, the Xiaomi Mi 11 Lite 5G, which has outstanding performance in a class. On performance though, the Chinese devices like the Pocos and the Realmes offer even better value with their high-end chips, so to be honest, there are plenty of good alternatives. Not many of them though quite offer the blend of features that the Xperia 10 Mark IV does, and for Sony that is a great sign in a crowded segment. So as to answer the question posed since the initial impressions, the answer is yes. The Xperia does match the Pixel in a lot of categories, and one of the most important is software experience and battery life. So in the end, I think we can settle for the Pixel as an Xperia Lite stand-in, with its own unique sauce on top. With all that said, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and again, please remember to subscribe and like the video if you want to see more content like this. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Cheers!